I wanted to analyze a racing game from the 90s for a while now. I've been looking for the perfect 90s racing game for months, and as you can tell, it took me over 3 months, if not more. Well, as you can see, I found the game, so it's time to analyze a racing game from the 90s.
Hi everyone, as always Patrick here. If you're already subscribed, make sure you turn on notifications, otherwise YouTube won't tell you if I posted anything. If you are new to the channel, make sure you watch until the very end and consider subscribing if you like it.
Okay, so what is this mysterious game from the 90s that I want to analyze? It's Motorhead. Before I can analyze each and every aspect of the game, however, first we need to talk about how to even install the game. First, you need to find the game. It's actually a lot harder than you think. The game is an abandonware. You can't buy it on any digital stores. The game was ported in 2015 on Steam, but instead of publishing the original PC version of the game, the publisher, which is not the original one that published the game back in the 90s, decided to publish a badly done port of the original PS1 version. Besides being bad, it was also illegal because it's almost for sure that they never had the permission of DICE to publish it. If that last statement is true, it could possibly explain why the game isn't available on Steam anymore. I tried to look for the game on some abandonware websites, like for example myabandonware.com, not sponsored, but those websites don't have any files. So no luck here either. So how did I find the game then? I found the game using the very old school and old-fashioned method. I had to find a physical copy of the game. And as you can see by the footage, I found it. It was very expensive and it took me a long time to find. But okay, I have the physical copy of the game now, so I can just put the CD into the optical drive and install the game from there, right? No, because I don't have an optical drive. In fact, almost every PC gamer nowadays doesn't have an optical drive at this point. So I bought an optical drive and I installed it on my PC. Man, so much effort just to install one game. Okay, so now that I have the optical drive, I put the CD into it, and then I get the error message called Motorhead is designed for Windows 95 and cannot be run on Windows NT. Great! The game cannot be installed directly from the CD. What you need to do is to copy the whole install CD to a folder on the drive. Then you have to download the zip file called is5 launcher. Then you have to extract the contents of the zip file called is5 launcher onto motor/disk1, at least that's how it looked like in my case, and then set the setup exe file to Windows 95 compatibility mode. Once you do that, you'll be able to install the game. And that's exactly what I did. I checked this method on multiple modern PCs and I was able to, and it worked every single time. Didn't have any issues when I did that, so that's great. Okay, so the game is now installed on the PC. That means you can just launch the game, right? Not really. There are some things you need to fix. A lot of things. When you launch the game will show you the intro movie and then it will crash. That's because the system is trying to run the game in Direct 3D, which is unsupported on modern PCs. Thankfully, there is a workaround for this. you can use the glide renderer using a wrapper. What do you have to do? You have to download nglide, then you have to install it like normal. A message saying something like nglide is now installed should appear when done. Then you'll be able to open the game and go into the graphics settings. Make sure you look for the renderer at the top of options and select the 3dFX Interactive Glide driver. There is a problem with this, however. Only resolutions up to 1024 by 768 are available. Not ideal for today's standards. Also, I'm really sorry if I butcher some words. It's been a while since I've recorded anything. But wait a minute, there are times where you can do just that and the game will still crash. What's up with that? Well, the copy I got was quite outdated. More specifically, I got the 1.2 version of the game. If you have an outdated copy of the game, like I do, you have to install the 3.0 patch. The 3.0 patch is the official patch made by developers of the game. So, what's the problem? Just download the patch and install it, right? Well, not really. Even the patch installer has issues. The patch installer is also designed for Windows 95 and won't work on modern systems without workarounds. Amazing! Thankfully, you can find the extracted version of the patch on the PC Gaming Wiki. And not only that, the extracted version of the patch also works on modern PCs. Just make sure you get the correct patch, and by that I mean get the one for your region. For example, if you're in Europe, use the European patch. At that point you should be able to launch the game, go into the options, and also, just play the game. And yeah, but before you do anything, make sure you also tinker with the options. You can also find other renderers like the software renderer, and there's also one other renderer that I can't remember right now. I'm really sorry. Other renderers allow you to launch the game in 1920 by 1080 resolution. However, the resolution will be stretched. There is a way to fix this, but more on that later. Now I just want to focus on actually getting the game to work. Okay, you've installed all patches, you've applied all the fixes, you tinkered with the options, and you can actually race. So that means everything works correctly and there's nothing else to fix, right? Wrong. There's one more thing you need to fix, and that thing is the pause menu. For some reason, when you pause the game, you can't see any options. The game stays paused, but you won't be able to see options like exit to the main menu, resume game, and other stuff like that. Thankfully, there is a very easy fix for that. All you have to do is use DigiVoodoo 2. Install it on your PC. Make sure you copy all DLL files and paste them to the game directory, and do the same with the file called DigiVoodoo CPL. If you do everything correctly, the pause menu will be fixed and it will show all the options I've just mentioned. Okay, now that we've done all of that, we can finally play the game. There are two more things I did, but don't worry, you don't have to do those if you want to just play the game. The first thing I did is I fixed the widescreen resolutions. You might not be able to see it, but that's because I messed up during the recording and I tinkered with the files because I wanted to do something else, so my footage will be stretched. I'm really sorry. I didn't notice that when I was recording. But anyway, the way to fix this is to use the good old trusty Automaniac 005's fix for this. He made a widescreen and FOV fix for the game. You can find it on the PC Gaming Wiki. Just follow his instructions and you'll be able to fix the widescreen resolutions and the FOV. The second thing I did is something that you won't be able to see because I wanted to show the authentic look of the game. I used DJ Voodoo 2 to force anti-aliasing and anisotropic filtering. It works as intended and makes the game look a lot cleaner and sharper. Did you notice that I spent almost 11 minutes talking about how to fix the game? If you listened to all of that, you're a real one. For your reward, let's analyze the game properly. Motorhead is a racing game developed by DICE, yes, the Battlefield DICE, and it was released in 1998 for the PS1. It was ported to PC in 1999. The game was published by Gremlin Interactive in Europe and Fox Interactive in North America. What you're seeing right now is the PC version. That was the basic info about the game. Let's talk about the graphics. The game came out in 1998 and I have to say, for 1998 this is a stellar looking game. I know it's hard to judge because it's a very old game and standards were different back then, but I compared this to other racing games from 1998 and I have to say no other racing game in 1998 looks as good as this one. Let's do the good old trusty comparison, shall we? In 1998 we had games like Sega Touring Car Championship, Ultimate Race Pro, Extreme Driving Classics, Need for Speed 3 Hot Pursuit, and of course the big one, Colin McRae Rally. You could argue that Need for Speed 3 Hot Pursuit is on par with Motorhead graphically, but I would argue that Motorhead looks better, mainly because of the aesthetic and because of the fact that it has sharper textures and just better effects. For example, better lighting effects. Even the baked lighting effects are really good for its time. There's not much I can say here, honestly. This is just a stellar looking game for 1998. There is one problem with the graphics, however. Only one problem. The problem is, all of the tracks in the game contain a great amount of fog, making the range of view extremely short, especially in the PS1 version. Oh, and side note, I did play the PS1 version as well, so I will compare the two versions. One more thing, all the footage I will show you in this video will be from the PC version. That's because I don't want you to look at a pixelated mess that is the PS1 version. It's possible that the fog was added on purpose to hide the fact that the game was not properly optimized or to feature a high frame rate on the many platforms where the game was released, mainly on the PS1, a console that wasn't able to run games at 60 FPS by default. A good example of this theory is when you play in the hi-fi mode from the first Gran Turismo game. As you can see that the backgrounds are not as detailed as they were in the original tracks. When it comes to graphical options, well, go back to the part of the video where I talked about how to fix every issue with the game, because I've talked about everything there. The only thing I can add to this is the fact that even with the fixes, some things won't work as intended. The frame rate will be stable, however, it will still lag, crash and stutter from time to time. I mean, it is a game from 1998, so you can't really expect much from it nowadays. So yeah, the game still looks good even after all those years. Let's talk about the story. Um, I mean, the game came out in 1998. Yeah, when it comes to stories in racing games from the 90s, there's only one thing you should know about them. The developers didn't make stories for racing games because that wasn't a requirement. In racing games from the 90s, you just raced. And that's the story segment of the video done. Let's talk about the gameplay. The game has several championships to complete. You start off by using very weak cars at the beginning and only 2 tracks. When you win the championship, you move on to the next tier. In the next tier, you get better cars and you have more tracks to go through. For example, at the beginning there are only 2 tracks. In the next tier there are 4. In another tier there are 6 tracks, and so on and so forth. Once you win every championship or every tier or whatever you want to call it, you will have to face the final challenge. The final challenge being a 1v1 race against a very skilled AI driver. You race him in an oval circuit. You cannot let him pass you, because if he does pass you, and he wins, you go back to the previous championship and you have to do the previous championship all over again. If you do defeat that skilled AI driver, however, you win the game and that's it. After that, you can just race for fun or maybe just go play multiplayer, except for the fact that the official servers shut down a long time ago. And that was the description of the gameplay loop. Now it's time to talk about other gameplay related stuff. The damage model, physics, handling, cars, tracks, and other stuff like that. Let's start with the damage model. Honestly, this section will be very short because there's only one thing I can say about it. It's non-existent. Yeah, it doesn't matter if you crash into something light, you might even crash into a brick wall. You can even crash into other racers. Nothing will damage your car. There's no visual damage model and there's no mechanical damage model. You do get sparks when you hit something, but that's all you get. Like I've said, there's nothing. No dents, no scratches, the car doesn't become worse when you crash into something. There's nothing. Normally, I get really angry when a racing game doesn't have a damage model, but this time I'll give it a pass. That's because of how the gameplay of the game is designed. More on that later. Now let's talk about the physics. Look, I know this is a game from 1998, but the physics in this game are not good. In fact, they are bad. Firstly, this is one of those games where the physics are tied to the frame rate. So if the game is running at higher than 60 FPS, the cars become a lot more lightweight than usual. There are times where the cars become so lightweight they just start floating like a feather. Even when you play the game with the right amount of FPS, the cars just have a hard time being glued to the road. Every time you use a ramp or a normal jump, the car descends really slowly. And of course, it gets worse the higher the FPS. What I mean by that is that the issue becomes a lot worse with higher frame rates. Sometimes when you land after using a jump, your car will just spin out for no reason whatsoever. To make things worse, your opponents are unaffected by this. The car can also spin out when you hit other objects or other cars. Speaking of hitting things, the collision detection in this game is bad. This is another thing that's tied to the frame rate. The hitboxes are way too big, especially for opponents' cars. You don't really get any good indication of you hitting something. And in some cases, when you crash into a wall with a fast car, your vehicle can abruptly get out of the road or ascend insanely high to the point that you can even see outside of the levels. Not fun. Other aspects of the physics and collision detection aren't worth talking about because they're just meh. With that being said, let's talk about the handling and the controls while we're at it. The handling and the controls are both good and bad. Let me explain. The cars are grippy, they don't slide, they can be twitchy at times, but it's not a big deal. And the turning radius for all cars is actually pretty good. You can turn without any major problems, which is a good thing. So in that regard, the controls and the handling should be good, right? Well, there's the bad part. If you try to drive off-road, your car will start losing control and your speed will decrease drastically. However, this mechanic seems to be completely intentional since the developers thought it might add some kind of realism to this game. But that's not even the worst part, because even if you're driving on the road, pressing the left or the right key on the keyboard, depending on where you want to turn, for too long will make the car drift and lose control. Something that a racing game should never do if it wants to have a good driving gameplay. Because of this, sometimes it can be incredibly difficult to take a curve without drifting and losing a lot of speed, especially in the sharp curves. But here's the thing, in the PS1 version, when you press the left or the right key on the D-pad, in that case, you will start drifting immediately. In the PC version, when you do the same, the game gives you more control over your car, but it will still inevitably start drifting. But things get worse. Every car can be differenced by its maximum speed, acceleration and handling. However, the only real difference between the many cars of the game is the maximum speed, as all the vehicles have the same handling problems and accelerate almost immediately, making these two stats a complete joke. To summarize this section, the controls are decent even if they are a bit problematic, and the handling is somewhat basic, with your car holding the road well up to a certain point when it will drift. But drifting makes the momentum worse and leaves you far behind. Even worse is if you come off the track onto grass. It's like ice. You know, I feel like I've been very negative up to this point. Let's talk about something positive for a change. The cars. I love the look of the cars. I love the futuristic look. It fits very well with the atmosphere of the game. Something curious is that most of them take inspirations on real-life sports vehicles. For example, the Lamborghini Gallardo. Another positive thing I can say about those cars is something very specific that happens in the PC version. I could have included this in the handling part of the video, but I'm going to include it here. The handling and the controls of the cars in the PC version are much more comfortable and the cars don't drift as much compared to the PS1 version, as you can press the left or the right button while driving and still keep the control of your car. I can't really think of anything negative to say about those cars, because like I've said, I love how they look, I like how they have their own stats, even though most of them are a joke, and I like how they handle in the PC version, not in the PS1 version. Now let's talk about the tracks. The tracks in Motorhead are experimental, and oh boy, experimental tracks in a racing game from 1998? They're bad. Firstly, most of the layouts of the tracks are generic and very inconsistent. I think the word generic speaks for itself, so I'm going to talk about the inconsistent part. The developers didn't really know what to go for when designing the tracks, so they decided to include multiple qualities in one section of each track. I know, not the best choice of words here, but don't worry, I'll explain right now. Every track can be both narrow and wide at the same time. Every track can have long straights and a lot of sharp curves in the same section. Combine those two qualities, or aspects, or whatever you want to call it, and you get very inconsistent tracks with some questionable sections. I understand that this is one of the first racing games DICE ever made, so they probably didn't know what to do, but they just couldn't decide what they wanted to do with those tracks. I think the tracks would have been better if they did this approach instead. Take one aspect and use it on one track. Take another aspect and use it on another track, and so on and so forth. Secondly, a lot of those tracks feature a lot of problems in relation to the gameplay. Here are some examples. Red Rock has a beginner's trap where two ways are presented to continue with the trail of the track, but the only way that works is the right one. If you decide to choose the left one, you will enter a tunnel without exit, making you crash and lose a lot of time. However, this only affects the PS1 version. The PC version has some signals that kinda block the entrance to the tunnel, making it easier to avoid that way. Neo City has a curve that takes you to a bridge at the middle of the track where you need to be necessarily on the right side of the road to take it adequately. If you don't do it, you will crash into a wall that blocks the way. And if that's not enough, there's another curve at the end of the bridge that has the same bad layout design. This level is much worse on the PS1 version, because the fog that covers the track is darker than it should be, making these walls almost impossible to notice on your first try. Rorstadt, I think I'm pronouncing that right, is the worst track in the game. The general layout of the track is horrible because it's infested with a lot of sharp curves, tight angles, fake roads that lead you to crash into walls, and areas that shouldn't be there just because they're not adequate for a racing game, like a parking zone. And since the track is based on a pier, there's a part where you have to avoid many boxes, crates, and other badly placed obstacles in an extremely narrow area. Olympos has another beginner's trap near the beginning of the level where you have to avoid a fountain located in the middle of a very small square area. What makes this worse, besides its small size, is that it was placed at a very bad area of the level. The first section of the track has many open curves and downward slopes, meaning that your car will probably get a high speed. Thus, the pacing you could probably expect is a very fast one. especially when the minimap doesn't even show adequately that an obstacle will show up. To summarize this section, the tracks are generic and have many questionable design choices. The most important aspects of the gameplay are now finally analyzed. Now let's talk about some other good and bad things about the game. I've been very negative in that last section of the video, so I'll start with the good stuff. You can paint your car like you want, set your racer name, and also set hotkey chats. Sadly, these are features that are only available in multiplayer mode, but I like the fact that they're there. Another great quality, the PS1 version of the game is one of the few games that can run at fluent and stable 60 FPS by default. However, you can only race against 2 rivals in this case. If you want to race against 5 of them, something that can be changed in the options menu, the frame rate will change to 30 frames per second instead of 60. But since the frame rate is still stable, you probably won't be bothered by this. Yet another great quality, the CGI cutscenes that play in the intro and after winning or losing a league race look awesome for its time. They are reminiscent of many sci-fi movies and games of its time, like Blade Runner for example. Okay, time to start counting those good qualities. 4 good qualities. The soundtrack composed by Olaf Gustafsson is awesome and memorable. It is reminiscent of the British electronic music duo Orbital. And the 5th good quality, despite the excessive amount of fog that the game uses for all the levels, the graphics are still stellar for a 1998 racing game. Okay, unfortunately it's that part of the video, the bad qualities. Firstly, using the manual transmission in this game is a nightmare, because the car will slow down too much or not enough when you're making the transition from gas pedal to brake. And even if you want to shift gears, the car will accelerate in a very strange way just to get the gear shift done. It's not like in other games that will shift it immediately and reduce your speed if you didn't shift gears at the appropriate time. Secondly, for some strange reason, the transition between the 2 available cameras, front and third person, is very inconsistent. Switching to the frontal view is immediate and it has no issues, but the problems begin when you switch from the frontal view to the third person view. Somehow, depending on the track and your location, the transition between cameras can be immediate or last more than 1 second. This wouldn't be a problem if it wasn't by the fact that the transition begins in the frontal part of the vehicle or the left side of the same, which can disorient you, especially when you're taking a curve or driving through a narrow zone. Thirdly, the AI is horribly unfair. It will always race faster than you and take curves perfectly without losing speed or drifting. Even if you change the difficulty level to easy, the AI is still very unfair and winning a single race is a matter of luck that is not helped by the terrible layout design of the tracks. However, in a similar way to Cyberpunk 2077 vehicle AI, if you block the way with your vehicle, the AI will never try to evade you or crash into you to continue with the race. Instead, they will just stop and patiently wait until you decide to move. Full disclosure, I was playing on the hard difficulty. Yes, the worst of the worst. And as you can see, there were times that I was able to win, but that's because you have to cheese the game. You can cheese the game by wall riding. This is something the game doesn't teach you because the developers thought the game was balanced, while in reality it's not balanced. During my time with the game, I found out that wall riding doesn't slow you down much and you don't take any damage from it. So you can just wall ride everywhere and you will still be able to overtake your opponents, even on hard difficulty. Although, if I were you, I would still play the game on easy difficulty because the AI is incredibly unfair. And lastly, the sound design, not the soundtrack, that's a completely different thing, is horrible. Mostly because all of the vehicles of the game share the same ugly engine sound that resembles more of a blender or a modified RC car, and it only gets worse in the PC version as the sound effects of the crashes are absolutely horrible and can damage your eardrums in a matter of seconds due to its high volume and pitch. Now I have analyzed every aspect of the game, so it's time to conclude this. Motorhead is a racing game from 1998 that has amazing graphics, no story, and also some questionable design choices. Mostly questionable track design and some issues with the handling. This sounds like a bad game with good qualities, right? Well, yes, that's an accurate description, but for me, I know this will sound crazy, but I actually enjoyed myself with Motorhead. No, really, I mean it when I say it. I will say that originally I was going to write this game off because of the issues I talked about. But when I found out that you can cheese every difficulty by wall riding, I had a much more enjoyable time, and I was also able to see certain aspects of the game I wouldn't be able to see if I didn't do that. This game has many great qualities that are sadly overshadowed by the sheer abundance of bad qualities. Like I've said many times before, the graphics, the atmosphere, the aesthetic of the game are amazing. It's just a shame that the track design and the handling has so many issues. Despite this, I can still recommend the game. It still has that high-speed action and winning races feels great. Not to mention, the game also features an awesome soundtrack, which I've talked about before. Overall, this game is pretty straightforward, yet utterly compelling. That's why the game gets a recommendation from me.
But that pretty much sums up everything I wanted to say in this analysis video. Thank you for watching and I'll see you next time.
Just me.